Have you ever questioned something you were raised with and immediately felt guilty for even questioning it? Maybe somebody said that's just how we do things. Maybe they told you you've changed. Maybe they said you've become too Western, too independent, too outspoken. Or maybe nobody said anything at all. You simply knew. You knew that asking the question could make you the difficult daughter, the disrespectful niece, the woman who thinks she knows more than everybody who came before her. And that can be a lonely place to stand. Welcome back to the Queen Reset. I'm Diack, and today we are talking about what happens when you love your culture, but something inside you is beginning to question what you were taught to accept. Because there is a particular kind of loneliness that comes from loving where you come from and still needing to question parts of it. I know that feeling. I grew up in Africa, and there are things about the way I grew up that I treasure deeply. Things I have no desire to leave behind. The community, the way food brings people together, the way family extends far beyond the people living under one roof, the way an auntie can be an auntie whether she is technically related to you or not, the expectation that people look out for one another, the feeling that you belong to something larger than yourself. There are pieces of that I carry proudly. And there are other things that I can look at now as a grown woman and ask, do I still believe this? Does this still serve us? Who benefited from this expectation? Do I want the next generation carrying this too? And I think this is where many women get stuck. We are given this false choice: accept everything or reject everything, defend your culture or abandon it. But life is not that simple. Why can't I love my culture deeply and still question something inside it? Why can't I treasure one tradition and release another? Why does discernment have to mean betrayal? Loving something does not mean refusing to see it clearly. Sometimes the deepest love asks better questions. And for women, some of those questions can be uncomfortable. Maybe you were taught that a good woman keeps quiet about certain things. Maybe you were taught that family problems stay inside the family no matter what. Maybe you learned that respecting an elder means never disagreeing. Maybe endurance was praised so much that nobody stopped to ask what women were enduring. Maybe being a good daughter meant being available. Being a good wife meant adjusting. Being a good mother meant coming last. And when you start questioning those expectations, it can feel like you're questioning everybody who came before you. But those are not the same thing. I can honor the woman before me without repeating every condition under which they had to live. I can love what they gave me without carrying everything they carried. I can respect my culture without pretending every practice inside that culture is sacred simply because it's old. And there is another piece of this I think we don't talk about enough. Culture changes. It always has. Recipes changes. Language changes. People move. Families blend. Communities adapt. What we call tradition today was often somebody's adaptation yesterday. So maybe our job is not to phrase culture exactly where we receive it. Maybe our job is to carry it forward with discernment. What is worth protecting? What nourishes us? What creates belonging? What honors people? And what was simply passed down because nobody felt safe enough to question it? There is a difference between ancestral wisdom and inherited habit. Everything old is not automatically wisdom, and everything modern is not automatically progress. That is why discernment matters. And before we get to the practice, I want to help you recognize some signs that this tension may already be showing up in your life. Maybe you notice that you edit your opinions before you go home. You know what you really think, but you already know which parts of it will be called disrespectful, too Western, too independent, too modern. So you soften yourself before anyone even asks. Maybe you find yourself defending a tradition publicly that you privately do not agree with, simply because criticism from outsiders feel different from criticism from inside the family. Maybe you need three people to approve a decision that belongs to you because making it alone feels like disloyalty. Maybe you feel guilty every time your life looks different from the life woman before you were allowed to have. Maybe you hear that is not how we do things, and your body immediately reacts as if the conversation is over. Those are signs that you may not be making a cultural decision anymore. You may be making a fear decision. And I want us to separate those two, because there's a difference between saying, I choose this because it reflects my value, and I choose this because I'm afraid of what people will say if I don't. That distinction matters. So here is another tool I want you to use when you are looking at the tradition, expectation, family rule or belief. Put it into one of four categories. The first one, keep it. Some things deserve to stay exactly because they nourish you. Maybe it is the way family gathers around food. Maybe it is how elders are cared for. Maybe it is prayer. Maybe it is language. Maybe it is generosity. Maybe it is the expectation that people look out for each other. You do not have to question something simply because it is old. If it is good, keep it. Carry it proudly. Teach it. Protect it. The second one, adapt it. Some things are not wrong, but the form may need to change. Maybe family closeness matters to you, but that does not mean every relative gets unlimited access to your time. Maybe respect for elders matters to you, but respect does not have to mean silence. Maybe caring for family matters, but one daughter should not become the entire family care system simply because she is the daughter who says yes. The value can stay while the practice changes. The third one, release it. Some things may simply need to end. A practice that protects harm, a rule that requires women to disappear, a belief that says suffering is proof of goodness, a silence that exists only because speaking will make other people uncomfortable. You are allowed to say, this was handed to me, but I'm not handing it forward. And then there is a fourth category that I think is important. Investigate it. Sometimes we do not know enough yet. Maybe what we were told was tradition is actually one family's habit. Maybe something has religious meaning we never understood. Maybe a rule began for a reason that no longer exists. Maybe we have only heard one generation's explanation. Ask questions. Talk to elders. Talk to more than one elder if you can. Ask where the practice came from. Ask whether everybody actually did it that way. Ask what changed over time. Curiosity can protect us from doing two things I do not want us to do: romanticizing everything old or dismissing everything old. Both are too easy. Now, what happens when you have done the thinking and somebody you love still disagree with you? This is where many women abandon their own conclusion because they do not know how to hold it in a relationship. You do not need to turn your decision into a courtroom argument. You can say, I understand that this matters to you. I see it differently now. You can say, I'm not rejecting where I came from. I'm making a different choice inside of it. You can also say, I respect you, and this is still the decision I'm making. You can say, I want to keep this part of our tradition. I do not want to continue that part. And sometimes you do not need to say anything at all. Every act of growth does not require a family announcement. Sometimes discernment is private before it becomes visible. You change how you parent. You stop repeating one phrase. You stop participating in one pattern. You make one different decision. And over time, your life becomes the answer. There is also something else I want you to be prepared for. You may feel guilty even when you know your decision is right for you. Do not automatically interpret guilt as proof of betrayal. Sometimes guilt simply means you have stepped outside of an old expectation. If you were taught that a good daughter never disagrees, the disagreement may feel wrong before it feels normal. If you were taught that family loyalty means silence, speaking honestly may feel cruel before it feels healthy. If you were taught that being a good woman means always adjusting, choosing yourself may feel selfish before it feels balanced. The feeling does not always tell you the truth about the decision. So when guilt shows up, ask yourself, Did I actually violate one of my value, or did I violate somebody else's expectation of me? That question can save you a lot of confusion. Here is something I want you to try. Choose one belief, saying, expectation, or tradition you grew up with that you have been questioning. Just one. And ask two questions. What did this protect? And then, who did this protect? Those two questions can reveal very different things. Take the phrase, family business stays inside the family. What might that have protected? Privacy, dignity, family cohesion, protection from outsiders who might not understand? There can be wisdom there. But now ask, who did it protect? Sometimes it protected everyone. And sometimes silence protected the person causing harm more than the person experiencing it. Both truths can exist at the same time. That is what discernment allows. Or take another belief. A good woman sacrifices for her family. There is beauty in generosity. There is beauty in sacrifice when it is chosen. There is beauty in showing up for people you love. But if sacrifice becomes the only acceptable identity for a woman, then we have to ask a different question. At what point does devotion become disappearance? Because I do not believe our ancestors survived everything they survived so that the woman who came after them could never evolve. I think honoring them also means using the opportunities they did not always have. The opportunity to ask questions, to choose differently, to have a voice, to say this part stays, this part changes, this part I carry with pride, this part ends with me. You do not have to announce your conclusions to anybody. You do not have to turn every family gathering into a debate. Sometimes the first act of change is simply becoming honest with yourself. And this can be especially complicated for women in the diaspora. Sometimes the minute you question anything, someone decides another country changed you. But exposure is not the same thing as rejection. Growth is not abandonment. Sometimes seeing another way simply gives you language for something you have felt for a very long time. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to ask questions. You are allowed to love Africa and still challenge something you believe African women deserve better than. You are allowed to be rooted without being trapped, because roots do not exist so a tree can never grow. Roots give it enough grounding to grow. So this week, instead of asking, do I accept my culture or reject it? Ask, what do I want to carry forward intentionally? And then, what am I ready to stop caring simply because it has always been carried? That is not betrayal. That is stewardship. That is what it means to inherit something consciously. Thank you for sitting with me today. If this episode names something you have been quietly wrestling with, share it with another woman who understands what it means to love where you come from and still want something healthier for the woman coming after us. And please keep those two questions with you. What did this protect? Who did this protect? Thank you for listening. Thank you for remembering alongside me. This is the Queen Reset. I am Aja Jack. Welcome back, my queen.
I lost my way trying to be who they wanted. Smiled on the outside, inside I was haunted. Built up a life, but it didn't feel mine. So God broke it down.